The jungle had always been a place where the air felt heavy enough to drink, thick with heat and the scent of rot. Tonight, it carried something new, an electric hum, too low for most ears but enough to stir the animals into silence. Beneath the cathedral-high canopy, shafts of moonlight sliced through drifting mist, illuminating the shapes that didn't belong. The alien strike teams moved like hunters who believed themselves at the top of every food chain. Each figure was wrapped in angular plates of alloy, armor that shimmered faintly under the moon. Their rifles purred instead of clattered, throwing out bursts of blue light when they tested them. Drones the size of hawks flitted overhead, scanning the ground in crisscrossing sweeps. The aliens spoke in a clicking language that sounded like bones tapping on glass. Their commanders had assured them this operation would be swift. Locate the target specimens, secure the landing site, and return to orbit before the sun rose twice. They had studied Earth's jungles from afar. The humidity, the insect swarms, the tangled layers of vegetation. It was, in their eyes, a hostile hellscape only to the weak. They wore climate-controlled suits, carried rations for a week, and believed no native force could navigate this terrain faster than they could. They expected resistance from soldiers, perhaps a skirmish with local militias, but nothing beyond that. No one had told them that the jungle could be claimed by someone without banners, ranks, or even a name. On the other side of the world, in a steel-gray operations room, the satellite feeds had already shown the landers. 3 wedge-shaped craft, partially buried under the canopy, camouflaged by strange fabric that drank in light. The images flickered as cloud cover thickened, but the commanders had seen enough. Conventional response was risky. Open engagement could drive the aliens deeper into hiding, and sending a squad meant risking capture or worse. The mission required precision. It required someone who could move like a shadow and kill without being seen. The request was sent through channels so classified that even the colonel issuing it had to leave the room while it transmitted. Somewhere far from the jungle, a man received it. No name was on the envelope, no rank, no unit. The message was short coordinates and a single phrase: high-value elimination, immediate deployment. Hours later, a dark helicopter skirted low over treetops, rotors muffled by custom baffles. It touched down in a small clearing cut by hand, not machine. No landing lights, no radio chatter. The man who stepped out carried only a long, matte black rifle in a weatherproof wrap and a canvas rucksack. His clothes were stripped of insignia, his boots already stained with jungle mud. His eyes, a cold gray in the dim light, scanned the tree line once before settling on the officer waiting for him. "Sir, the targets landed here, and here," the officer said, pointing to a laminated map speckled with red grease pencil marks. "They're well armed. Drones in the air, patrols on the ground. We estimate." "Numbers don't matter," the man interrupted, his voice low but steady. The officer studied him for a moment, as if searching for some trace of bravado, some flicker of ego. There was none, just the same calm stillness one might see in a coiled viper. The officer cleared his throat and handed over the map. "We've been told you operate solo. No radio contact." The man slid the map into his pocket. "You'll know when it's done." In the alien camp, one of the patrol leaders tilted its helmet slightly, sensors sweeping. Something about the forest felt wrong. It could not name it. Heat levels were steady, motion detectors silent, but the sensation lingered like a distant drumbeat. The jungle had been loud when they landed. Now it was muted, as if the trees themselves were listening. The man without a call sign moved through that silence with a pace as natural as breathing. He'd been dropped miles from the alien coordinates to keep their sensors from detecting engine heat. The rest was done on foot, weaving between roots thicker than his torso, sliding beneath walls of hanging vines, pausing when the moonlight brightened just enough to betray him. Every movement was deliberate, economical, as if each step had been planned years before tonight. He reached a ridge that overlooked the faint blue glimmer of the alien landing zone. Through the leaves, he could see them unloading crates from their ship, some metallic, others filled with writhing shapes sealed in fluid. Their discipline was clinical, their formation perfect. It didn't matter. Perfection had patterns, and patterns could be broken. From this distance, he could already identify the command unit. the tallest figure, armor marked with subtle silver bands, issuing orders with a slow turn of its wrist. That one would die last. The others would be made to feel the space between life and death, their fears sharpened by the knowledge that something was watching. The sniper lay prone, feeling the earth's damp chill seep into his chest. He didn't raise the rifle yet. That would come later. For now, he studied wind currents in the leaves, the angle of moonlight on metal, the way the aliens' heads tilted when a sound caught their attention. Every detail was another thread in the web he was weaving. In the command tent, the alien leader reported to orbit that their position was secure. The jungle, it claimed, was a slow opponent. The humans would need days to respond. Their landing was invisible to crude terrestrial sensors. There was no chance, it assured, of being hunted here. Far above, the clouds thickened, swallowing the stars. Down in the dark, the man without a call sign finally adjusted his scope, the faint click lost in the weight of the night. He found the shape of a sentry in the crosshairs and kept it there, not firing, just watching. The sentry's head moved, scanning the wrong direction. The sniper smiled without warmth. The hunt had already begun. The jungle was 1,000 shifting shades of darkness, each layer hiding something that could kill. For the man without a call sign, it was a kind of environment that made sense. No rules but survival, no truth but the one written in the moment before the trigger broke. He moved with the patience of erosion, his rifle cradled loosely, barreled down, letting the jungle swallow him one breath at a time. The alien patrols didn't realize how loud they were. Their armor brushed against palm fronds with metallic rasp. Their boots crushed saplings underfoot. In their own worlds, they were ghosts. Here, they were hammers in a place that rewarded only the quietest knife. Through the scope, their movement patterns became obvious. 3 forward scouts, 2 flank guards, 1 trailing heavy with a bulkier rifle. The formation repeated every 30 minutes, shifting only when the rain started. Patterns meant predictability, and predictability meant death. He chose his perch in a giant kapok tree, 20 meters above the ground, hidden in a cradle of branches thick enough to take his weight without groaning. From here, the world below was a living map. Runnels of shadow where patrols moved, clearings where they paused to check bearings, narrow paths worn into the undergrowth by the repetition of their sweeps. He watched without blinking for almost an hour, letting his breathing fall into rhythm with the wind. When the first shot came, it was almost casual. One patrol leader, caught mid-step, head turning toward a phantom noise, fell without sound. The impact was so precise that the alien dropped as if its strings had been cut, armor catching no glint of light as it vanished into the ferns. The others didn't even know it was dead until they turned to signal and found empty space. Confusion rippled through their ranks. The sniper didn't fire again. He let them churn in the uncertainty, weapons sweeping, voices rising in clipped, urgent bursts of clicks. Their formation broke, tightening in on itself, rifles pointed outward. Good. Fear made them clumsy. An hour later, another shot, this time the rearmost soldier. The round punched through a seam at the base of the skull, and the alien's body twitched twice before collapsing. The survivors began firing into trees, bolts of blue energy slicing through vines and bark. The light painted the jungle in stuttering flashes, revealing nothing. He had already moved, sliding down the kapok's trunk and disappearing into the undergrowth. His rifle was slung now, machete in hand. There was no need for noise. The machete's blade cut through vines and low branches with a whisper. Ahead, he heard the guttural hiss of alien breathing. Faster now, edged with panic. He planted the first trap, where their panic would lead them, a narrow gap between 2 leaning trees, choked with undergrowth. The tripwire was a thin strand of vine, nearly invisible, connected to a grenade buried in the mud. He moved on before the leaves settled from his passing. Overhead, one of the drones searched in tight spirals, its lenses scanning for heat signatures. He dropped flat into a shallow puddle, covering himself in thick black mud until he was nothing but another irregular shape in the terrain. The drone passed overhead without slowing. By the time the grenade went off, the sniper was already hundreds of meters away, climbing another tree. The blast ripped through the jungle, shredding leaves and sending a cloud of dirt into the air. The screams came a second later, one voice high and continuous. The others clipped short as the wounded were silenced. The aliens' discipline was still intact, but cracks were beginning to show. Night deepened, and the humidity wrapped itself around the alien gear like a curse. Condensation clouded their helmet optics. Moisture seeped into weapon housings, making some of the rifles emit a faint hiss when fired. The sniper knew the jungle would do half his work for him. All he had to do was guide the decay. From his new perch, he spotted the comms operator. The alien carried a larger pack, bristling with antennae, its attention fixed on a glowing wrist display. He let the crosshairs rest on the figure's head for a slow count of 3 before squeezing the trigger. The shot cracked, the body folded, and the alien network went silent in an instant. Somewhere out in the dark, an officer barked orders, sending squads converging on the comms operator's last position. They would find the body. They would realize their link to orbit was gone, and they would understand too late that they were now alone in this place. The sniper dismantled his rifle and stowed it in the rucksack, then descended to the jungle floor. The hunt was no longer about long shots from hidden heights. It was about making them feel him in the places they thought were safe. A snapped twig near their perimeter, a shadow that moved against the wind, the faint scrape of steel on stone carried on the night air. By the time the first squad reached the calm's corpse, the jungle had gone silent again. Not the uneasy quiet of animals waiting for danger to pass, but the deep, absolute stillness of a predator waiting to strike. One alien scanned the canopy above, another checked the ground ahead. Neither noticed a glint of wet leaves behind them until the darkness shifted, and one of their own fell with a knife buried in its throat. The sniper left the body where it lay. Let them see it. Let them know they were bleeding. He vanished again into the undergrowth, a shadow among shadows, moving toward the faint pulse of alien light deeper in the jungle. Somewhere ahead was their command post, their leader, and the end of this hunt. But not yet. Not until every step they took carried the weight of knowing he was out there, somewhere, watching. The storm was coming. He could smell it in the air, feeling the way the wind turned restless in the treetops. The rain would be his ally, drowning sound and blinding sensors. He would wait for it, and when it broke, he would finish what he'd started. The first drops fell heavy and far apart, pattering against the canopy like scattered drum beats. Within minutes, the sky split open and the jungle dissolved into a curtain of rain. The sound swallowed everything, boots on mud, weapons charging, even the strained breathing of those who had been running for too long. The man without a call sign welcomed it. Storms erased distance, turned every shadow into a hiding place, and every movement into a ghost whisper. Through the downpour, the alien strike teams tightened their formation. Gone was the casual swagger of their first patrols. Now their rifles swept constantly, their heads turning in sharp, anxious jerks. Their armor gleamed wet under flashes of lightning. The once pristine plates now streaked with mud and alien blood. They had adapted. Thermal filters tuned to cut through rain interference, tighter comm discipline, and heavier escort for their officers. But adaptation under pressure was still reaction, and reaction meant the sniper was ahead. He followed at a distance, using the storm as cover. Mud coated his skin, blurring his heat signature into the background wash of the rain-warmed jungle floor. His breathing slowed until it matched the rhythm of the falling water. Every so often, he glimpsed a glimmer of alien optics through the trees, but they never saw him. The aliens' leader had brought in heavier troops now. Bigger frames, thicker armor, weapons that hissed with a deeper, more menacing charge. They moved with less caution, trusting their size to push through any threat. The sniper watched them haul their bulk over roots and through waterlogged gullies, each step broadcasting their position to anyone who knew how to listen. Size was strength, but it was also noise. The first Hunter-class soldier went down without warning. A vine-wrapped log, suspended high in the canopy, swung down with bone-cracking force, knocking the alien into a tangle of roots. The squad's return fire lit up the jungle, burning holes through ferns and shattering branches, but the sniper was already gone, vanishing into the green maze before they could pinpoint him. The wounded alien thrashed, then stilled, its armor sparking faintly in the rain. He kept moving, cutting arcs through terrain that always left him behind them, yet never in the same place twice. His traps grew nastier, pungy stakes smeared with toxins from bright jungle frogs, deadfalls hidden beneath shallow pools, monofilament lines stretched between tree trunks at chest height. The jungle itself seemed to turn against the invaders, as though it too resented their presence. But even ghosts can be forced into close quarters. The storm drove one alien squad to shelter in a partially collapsed ruin, ancient stones swallowed by moss. The sniper circled once, listening. 6 sets of boots, the hum of charging coils, the wet click of claws on metal grips. No way to pick them off one at a time. Not here. He slid through a side arch half hidden by vines. The darkness inside was nearly absolute, but his eyes adjusted quickly. The first alien didn't hear him approach, only felt the cold edge of a blade press against the joint of its neck. The strike was swift, clean, and silent. The second turned too late, catching only a blur before a suppressed shot dropped it. The others fired blindly, their weapons scorching the stone, filling the ruin with the stink of burnt moss. He moved with the chaos, always just outside the sweep of their fire. A third alien went down to a knife in the gut, a fourth to a shot so close it burned the edge of its helmet. By the time the storm lightened, the ruin was silent again, rain dripping through cracks in the roof to patter on alien armor gone still. Outside, the surviving strike teams were unraveling, their patrol patterns fractured. Squads moved erratically, some doubling back over the same ground, others vanishing into the depths without reporting. The calm silence since the operator's death gnawed at them. No confirmation from their leader, no update from orbit, no sense of whether reinforcements would come. The sniper watched in the branches above as one alien knelt in the mud, its head bowed, shoulders heaving. The soldier beside it kept glancing upward, scanning the treetops in jerky motions. They knew he was out there. They didn't know where. That was enough. By the third day since he'd entered the jungle, their numbers had dropped by half. Of the original landing force, only a handful of full squads remained, and even those were scattered. The jungle seemed thicker now, the trails they cut overgrown by the hour, the air heavier with the smell of decay. Some of them spoke in hushed clicks, words thick with a tone that didn't require translation. Dread. The alien commander finally broke the silence. In the clearing near their last intact lander, it sent a brief encrypted burst skyward, a plea for extraction. Lightning clawed across the clouds above, but the signal pulsed through the interference, carrying with it an admission their kind rarely made. They had been hunted here, and they were losing. High in the trees at the edge of the clearing, the sniper lay prone, his scope fixed not on the commander but on the comms unit at its side. He watched the blinking signal light for several heartbeats, letting the rain bead and run off his optics. Then he adjusted his aim by a fraction and fired. The round punched through the device in a spray of metal and sparks, killing the transmission mid-burst. The commander spun, scanning the tree line, but there was nothing to see, only the rain, the wind, and the shifting green. Somewhere deep in the jungle, the sound of falling water masked a man's slow retreat. The extraction request had died before it could leave the planet. Now, the only way off of the aliens was through him, and he had no intention of letting that happen. The rain had become a constant curtain, falling in sheets so heavy it blurred the edges of the jungle. Each drop struck the leaves like the ticking of 1,000 clocks, a reminder that time was running out. Above, alien dropships droned in slow, predatory circles, their floodlights slicing to the canopy in wide arcs. Every beam promised discovery, every shadow a momentary reprieve. The sniper lay prone atop a slick, moss-covered ridge, his rifle steady despite the trembling earth beneath him. Somewhere in the valley below, the alien command relay pulsed with energy, feeding real-time data to the strike team scattered through the jungle. Destroying it would cripple their hunt, but getting there meant slipping through the tightening noose of enemy patrols. Over the past 24 hours, the enemy had grown more aggressive. They'd learned from their losses, no more open sweeps, no more careless chatter. They moved now in silence, cloaked and scanning, adapting in ways that made them harder to track. But adaptation worked both ways. The sniper had adjusted his routes, studied their movements, and found a narrow seam in their pattern, a weakness that would exist for less than 15 minutes before the next cycle began. A whisper of movement came from his left, It wasn't loud, just a faint shift of foliage, but it was enough to tighten his finger on the trigger. Seconds passed before a shape emerged. A man hunched, his face streaked with mud and rain. Captain Vance. He crawled into position beside the sniper, breathing heavily but speaking in the low, clipped tones of a man who knew every decibel mattered. "They've double patrol density on the East Ridge," Vance said, wiping water from his eyes. "You'll have one shot. After that, they'll blanket the sector with fire." The sniper nodded once. Words were unnecessary. Vance studied the man beside him. In all his years of command, he'd seen every type of soldier: reckless ones who charged in hoping for glory, cautious ones who hesitated until it was too late, and the rare few who moved like shadows and struck like inevitability. This one had no call sign, no unit patch, no history the files to confirm. But Vance had seen his work, and it was a kind of work that rewrote the balance of a battlefield. From their vantage point, the alien relay was a faint shimmer behind the tree line, its energy signature bending the air like heat-off asphalt. Guard towers flanked it, each manned by two of the towering reptilian sentinels. In between, a web of drones drifted lazily, their sensors overlapping like scales on armor. The sniper adjusted his scope, dialing in windage and elevation with minute, deliberate motions. The rain didn't matter. He accounted for the drop, the gusts, even the distortion caused by the relay's own heat output. Through the reticle, the world narrowed to the size of a coin. The shot, when it came, was less sound than sensation, a muted crack that seemed to vanish into the storm. A half-second later, the relay's central node erupted in a burst of white light, its hum dying mid-note. Sparks rained down as alien voices rose in alarm. The sniper didn't wait to watch the chaos unfold. He and Vance were already moving, melting back into the undergrowth before the first counterfire scorched their ridge. Beams lanced through the jungle, slicing through tree trunks and vaporizing ferns. One passed so close that the sniper felt the heat against his cheek, but he kept low, sliding down the slope into the shelter of a gully. Above the noise, he could hear it, the subtle shift in the enemy's cadence. The relay had been more than a command post. It had been their lifeline. Without it, their patrols lost synchronicity, their drones moved erratically, and their communication fell into jagged bursts. But victory came with a price. In the confusion, the enemy unleashed their hounds. Quadruped machines built for pursuit, their bodies low and fast, their sensors able to track through heat, scent, and sound alike. The jungle began to echo with their metallic growls. Vance's voice was tight. "Extraction points 2 clicks west. We move now or we don't move at all." They ran, every stride calculated to be silent yet swift, weaving through roots and hanging vines. The rain masked some of their sound, but the hounds were gaining. The sniper glanced over his shoulder, just long enough to see the red glint of their optics cutting through the storm. Reaching a fallen log that spanned a flooded ravine, Vance leapt first, landing on the other side in a crouch. The sniper followed, but halfway across, one of the hounds lunged in the shadows, jaws snapping. He dropped low, letting its momentum carry it overhead, then spun and fired once. The round hit between its optics, shattering its sensor array in a spray of sparks. They pressed on. The canopy thinned ahead, and the faint thrum of rotor blades reached their ears. Extraction was close. But so were the other hounds. 3 now, breaking through the undergrowth with relentless speed. Vance reached the clearing first, signaling frantically to the waiting dropship. The sniper turned, planting himself at the tree line. He didn't fire wildly. Every round was measured, each one finding its mark. 2 hounds fell, twitching in the mud. The third closed the gap, its claws churning the earth, and leapt. The dropship side gun roared, tearing it from the air in a spray of metal and oil. Vance grabbed the sniper's arm, dragging him aboard. The bay door slammed shut, and the jungle fell away beneath them, the rain becoming a distant haze. Inside, soldiers stared at the man who had just turned the tide of the fight. He said nothing, just cleaned his rifle and checked the next round, as if the war was far from over. And in truth, it was. Somewhere beyond the clouds, more alien ships were descending,